Make a mistake, we can edit it out.
Okay. Welcome to the Office on Violence Against Women, FY18 Improving Criminal Justice Responses to Sexual Assault, Domestic Violence, Dating Violence, and Stalking Grant Program, or ICJR, formerly known as the Arrest Program, pre-application webinar. This webinar is presented by Kaylin Crockett and Sue Puglisi, OVW ICJR team members. Although we will not review every page and section of the solicitation, there have been a number of important changes to this year's FY18 ICJR solicitation, and we want to make sure you are aware of those changes. There are a few logistics we need to go over before we get started. All participants are on mute during this webinar. You can ask questions throughout by typing your question in the chat section. If you are connected to the webinar through your computer and lose connection, please sign on again using the initial link you received from the email invite. And if during this presentation we're unable to get to your questions or comments, always feel free to connect to us via email at ovw.icjr@usdoj.gov. First thing to know is hopefully you found us because you've already downloaded the application. For information on how to apply, we've provided you with a link in this slide. Be sure to use that link. It has valuable tools such as links to the grants reference guide and resources for your application. We've also provided the ICJR solicitation link, which is found under justice.gov. Go to Agencies, then OVW Grant Programs, and then Open Solicitations. The most important thing to remember before applying is to read the ICJR solicitation in its entirety, from the beginning to the end, whether you are a new or continuation applicant. We cannot stress that enough. And we're going to repeat several things during this webinar that we've found in the past applicants may overlook. MOUs, Memorandums of Understanding. We want to briefly talk about the MOU and how critical a piece of your project this is. Later in the presentation, we will discuss this in greater depth. Your MOU is the foundation of your project and should be strong enough to stand on its own by the time you apply to the solicitation. If your MOU is still in work in progress by the time you apply to this solicitation, you could possibly encounter problems such as securing commitments from potential project partners and obtaining the necessary and required signatures from the authorized representatives from each partnering agency. You should have all of this in place months before, if not at least weeks before you actually download the solicitation and prior to applying to the ICJR solicitation. Addressing purpose areas, pages 2 through 5 of the solicitation. Activities supported by the ICJR program are determined by statute, federal regulations, and OVW policies. Applicants must address at least one of the 22 statutory purpose areas listed on pages 2 through 5 of the solicitation. Only include statutory purpose areas that you truly intend to address. Sometimes applicants have a tendency to state in the application that they will address several statutory purpose areas. However, in the project narrative, specifically the What Will Be Done section, it's revealed that the applicant will only truly address one or two of those purpose areas. There's no extra credit for listing additional statutory purpose areas. In the next few slides, we will address the mandatory program and partnership requirements. Mandatory program requirements for victim service provider applicants. OVW requires that each applicant develop an MOU with its project partners. Applicants that are victim service providers must enter into a formal collaboration with a state, local government, or tribal government, as well as any specific governmental organizations that are necessary for the implementation of the proposed project. If you're not sure who you should partner with, we've provided a chart as a reference on the next slide. Leave this here for a few seconds. This slide provides examples of what we mean by units of local government: a county, city, township, town, borough, parish, village, or other general purpose political subdivision of a state. For the purposes of this program, police departments, sheriff's departments, prosecuting attorney offices, health departments, parole and probation departments, and universities are not units of local government. If you submit an application without the proper unit of local government as a project partner with signature on the MOU, your application will be removed from further consideration during our basic minimum requirement phase. Although these OVW priority areas are not required, there are a number of OVW priority areas that applicants can address. Applications proposing activities in these priority areas will be given special consideration during the review process. Please do not confuse the statutory purpose areas, which you are required to address at least one of the 22, with these OVW priority areas, which again, you are not required to address. We want to take this time to highlight a new OVW priority area for FY 2018 that OVW has special interest in: sex trafficking and other severe forms of trafficking in persons who have also experienced sexual assault, dating violence, domestic violence, and stalking. Applicants proposing to serve trafficking victims must specify this in their application and must demonstrate their capability to serve this population, either through their own expertise and experience or through partnerships with organizations and agencies that have such expertise and experience. Although not required, there are a number of statutory priority areas that are defined by legislation that applicants can address. Leave those up here for a moment for you to read. On pages 9 through 10 of the solicitation, we've listed 13 activities that have been found to jeopardize victim safety, deter or prevent physical or emotional healing for victims, or allow offenders to escape responsibility for their actions. All right, moving on to out-of-scope activities on page 10. And actually, before we move on to out-of-scope activities, I want to just reiterate about the activities that could compromise victim safety listed on the previous several slides. Note that this list is not exhaustive, and applications that propose activities that compromise victim safety and recovery or undermine offender accountability may receive a deduction in points during the review process or may be eliminated from further consideration entirely. All right. Activities that have been found to be out of the scope of the ICJR program. You can see on these slides, here are those out-of-scope activities. Applications that propose out-of-scope activities may receive a point deduction during the review process. Applications that are determined to be substantially outside the scope of the ICJR program won't be considered for funding. So, when drafting your grant proposal, you want to remain within the scope of the ICJR program. Here are some other out-of-scope activities. Well, actually, these ones are a bigger deal than out-of-scope. They are unallowable. So let's go over them. They are lobbying, except with explicit statutory authorization, fundraising, purchase of real property, physical modifications to buildings, including minor renovations, construction, and quite specific to our ICJR program, the purchasing of uniforms, weapons, automobiles, and security systems that require permanent installation. That is a no. All right. Moving on to award information and availability of funds, pages 11 through 12. All awards are subject to the availability of appropriated funds and any modifications or additional requirements that may be imposed by law. There is no guarantee that funds will be available in the future. Therefore, OVW encourages you to develop a plan to sustain project activities if federal funding through the ICJR program were no longer available. The grant award period is 36 months. Your application budgets must reflect 36 months of project activity, and the total estimated funding, Block 15 on the SF 424, must also reflect 36 months. Generally, the award period will start on October 1, 2018. Carefully consider the resources needed to successfully implement the proposed project and present a realistic budget that accurately reflects project costs. Also remember the various partners associated with your application. Budget caps. The funding levels under the ICJR program for FY 2018 are as listed. Keep in mind that your service area population will be the service area that your specific project is proposing. So if you're going to be a town or a countywide project, that will be the population. If you're a statewide or regional project, that will be the population that you're associating with this dollar amount. And the same goes for tribal reservations. So, for example, a service area population up to 500,000 people will be $450,000 total. Population of 501,000 to 900,000 will be $750,000 total budget. and over 900,000 in population will be $900,000 total budget. Bear in mind that OVW has the discretion to award grants for greater or lesser amounts than requested and to negotiate the scope of work and budget with applicants prior to awarding a grant. In FY18, OVW will accept applications from new applicants who have never received funding under the ICJR program or continuation applicants that have an existing or recently closed within the last 12 months award. New applicants also qualify as those who had previous funding that expired more than 12 months ago. Due to the change in definition of unit of local government, some previous recipients of ICJR awards may not be eligible to apply for continuation funding as the lead applicant, such as any parish sheriff's office, and can apply through their unit of local government, and of course, continuation funding is not guaranteed. Grant recipients who received new or continuation funding under the ICJR program for 36 months in FY 2016 or FY 2017 are not eligible to apply for funding this cycle. Please note that continuation applicants that have a substantial amount of funds remaining, i.e. 50% or more, at the time of application submission, without an adequate justification for why so much funding remains, may not be considered for an award in FY 2018. Every year, we experience a number of applicants who have questions about their eligibility to apply, and it can appear to be confusing. The eligible entities that can apply directly to the solicitation are states, tribal governments, state, local, tribal, and territorial courts, including juvenile courts, units of local government, and victim service providers, including state, tribal, or territorial domestic violence or sexual assault coalitions, and government rape crisis centers in a state other than a territory. On pages 13 to 14, you will find the definitions that describe the eligible entities. Non-eligible entities cannot apply directly under their agency name because they are not units of local government as defined by the ICJR program unless they meet the definition of unit of local government under our program. To reiterate, police departments, pretrial service agencies, district or city attorney's offices, sheriff's departments, parole and probation departments, universities, and health departments are not units of local government. Per the ICJR program solicitation, the definition of unit of local government is set forth in 34 U.S. Code Section 12291A40. Applications from typically non-eligible entities that want to assert unit of local government status must include in their application proof of such status. If these agencies or organizations do not meet the definition of unit of local government, they're not eligible to apply directly for funding, but may assume a partner role and responsibility for the development and implementation of the project. They must apply through a state, local, territorial, or tribal court, a tribal government, or a unit of local government. Non-eligible entities can fill out the application, assume responsibility for the development and implementation of the project, but it still has to be submitted through your state, a state or tribal government, state, local, tribal, or territorial court, including juvenile court, or a unit of local government. Failure to comply with this will disqualify your application during the review process. Some specific requirements apply to nonprofit organizations, and these are listed on page 14 of the solicitation. In addition to meeting the eligible entity requirements, all applicants must certify that their laws or official policies meet the requirements according to Citation 34 U.S. Code 10461C in order to receive funding through the ICJR program. All certification and other eligibility-related documents must be current, developed in accordance with the FY 2018 ICJR solicitation, and signed by the Chief Executive Officer of the state, tribal government, unit of local government, and submitted at the time of the application. See Appendix F for a sample letter. Applicants whose submissions do not meet all of the eligibility requirements at the time of the application deadline won't be considered for funding. Submission of state, tribal, territorial, and/or local statutes, HIV letters, laws, and policies in lieu of a letter with proper certifications signed by the Chief Executive Officer will not satisfy these statutory requirements. Please note that applicants will not be contacted by OVW to correct inadequate certification letters. All certification of eligibility letters must be current and developed in accordance with the FY 2018 ICJR solicitation signed by the Chief Executive Officer of the state, tribal government, or unit of local government partner and submitted at the time of the application. And OVW, unfortunately, will also not redirect documents that are inadvertently submitted with the wrong application. For example, an ICJR certification letter submitted to a transitional housing program application won't be transferred back to us in the ICJR program, and therefore wouldn't be included with your ICJR application. Applicants are strongly encouraged to submit a letter of registration. The letter should state that the applying organization is registered and current with the SAM and with grants.gov. Submit to OVW by emailing to ovw.icjr@usdoj.gov by February 8th, 2018. You can find a sample letter of registration on page 55 of the solicitation, Appendix B. Note that this isn't a requirement, however, and submitting a letter of registration does not obligate you to go forward in submitting a grant application. Application components, pages 19 through 24. Starting with the project narrative. The project narrative can be no more than 20 pages. If you submit more than 20 pages of the project narrative, we will stop reviewing the narrative on page 21. So stick to the limit. The budget detail worksheet and narrative. Bear in mind that the award period is 36 months, so be sure to make sure that your budget detail, worksheet, and narrative reflects 36 months. The certification of eligibility letter must be submitted along with the application. You can find a sample certification of eligibility letter on page 64 under Appendix F of the ICJR solicitation. Summary data sheet. The summary data sheet is 1 to 4 pages in length and may be single or double spaced. This does not count towards your 20-page limit for the project narrative. Please provide a statement as to whether you are addressing the trafficking priority area, which is new for the 2018 solicitation. Identify the project focus. Are you going to be working closely with law enforcement, prosecution, courts, a family justice center? Are you going to be emphasizing training with your project? Or are you going to propose other special projects that fall within the scope of the ICJR program? Also provide the start and end date of the next state or tribal legislative session. Also make sure that you address at least one of the statutory purpose areas. If your program can only address one, that's fine. There's no contest of how many you can address, but please stay within the parameters of what your project has the capacity to do. Don't be overzealous. If you pick one thing but show you can do it extremely well, that's great. Applicants are not required to address the statutory priority and/or OVW priority areas, but you should clearly state which priority areas will be addressed by the application, if applicable. The summary data sheet must address numbers 1 through 19 in your attachment. The proposal abstract. This should be no more than 2 pages, double-spaced. It provides a short and accurate summary of the proposed project, including who will be involved with the proposed project, what will be done as primary activities, what products will be produced, the service area where the proposed project will take place, and who will be impacted by the proposed project. Applicants should not summarize past accomplishments in this section. Your budget. Make sure to stay within the budget caps. Include line items in your budget that are reasonable and within the scope of what you propose to do. We don't want to see any surprise budget items, and the budget shouldn't contain any items that are not evidently described in your project narrative. A sample budget worksheet is available on pages 43 through 53 of the solicitation, Appendix A. Also note that grantees under this program may not issue a solicitation or request for proposals redistributing these funds after receiving an award. Training and technical assistance. Both new and continuation applicants are required to set aside $10,000. If you're an applicant from Alaska, Hawaii, or a U.S. territory, you're required to set aside $15,000. Remember, this only applies to applicants from Alaska, Hawaii, or a U.S. territory. Also note that the $10,000 or $15,000 set aside is for the entire 36 months. Applicants are required to submit an MOU that demonstrates they have consulted with and coordinated in a meaningful way with population-specific organization if this is one of the proposed priority areas to address with your application. We'll go back to that a little bit later. Now, for the purposes of this application, the Memorandum of Understanding, MOU, is a document containing the terms of the partnership and the roles and responsibilities between two or more parties. The MOU should be a single document and should be signed and dated by the authorized representative of each proposed partner agency during the development of the application. For your reference, check the SF 424 for the definition of authorized representative. The MOU can include multiple signature pages as long as each page includes the name and title of each signing party. Previously funded applicants must develop a new MOU that reflects the continuation of project activities and includes current dates and signatures from all relevant project partners. The MOU must identify partners and provide a brief history of the collaborative relationship among those partners, including when and under what circumstances the relationship began and when each partner entered into the relationship. The 7 criteria that the MOU must address are outlined on page 25 of the solicitation. Please note that letters of support are no substitute for the MOU. MOU continued. Clearly state the roles and responsibilities each organization or agency are committed to assuming to ensure the success of the proposed project. Include specific project partners. Describe the resources each partner would contribute to the project, either through time, in-kind contributions, or grant funds. For example, office space, project staff, training. Also specify the extent of each partner's participation in developing the application. In your MOU, demonstrate a commitment on the part of all project partners to work together to achieve stated project goals. Indicate approval of the proposed project budget by all signing parties. And identify the representatives of the planning and development team who will be responsible for developing and implementing project activities, and describe how they will work together with project staff. This must also be on the letterhead of the governmental applicant or partner, state, unit of local government, etc., and signed by the designated official signatory, mayor, governor, county administrator, chief judge, principal chief, etc. Trafficking priority area. Applicants applying under the trafficking priority area must also clearly identify which organizations has the expertise in providing services to victims of trafficking, including how many years the organization or organizations have been providing services for victims of trafficking. Detail the personnel designated to provide services to trafficking victims, including the name and title of each person, and how many years each of those persons have been providing services to trafficking victims. Include a local, state, and or federal law enforcement agency and a local, state, and or federal prosecutor's office as MOU partners. Note that federal law enforcement agencies and U.S. attorneys' offices cannot receive ICJR grant funds and should not be compensated in a budget. Applicants applying in the underserved populations priority area must also clearly identify which organization or organizations have expertise in providing targeted population-specific services to victims. Detail the personnel with expertise in providing the targeted population-specific services to victims, including their name and title, and how many years each staff person has been providing such services. Friendly reminder, it's required that all nonprofit organizations, victim service providers, need to provide evidence of your 501c3 status. Another note up here related to nonprofit organizations. All right, additional information required, pages 26 to 29 of the solicitation. Though these documents won't be scored during the review process, failure to include any of them may result in an application being removed from consideration from funding. Some tips for completing these forms. Application for federal assistance, SF424. For type of applicant, do not select other. Pay careful attention to the amount of federal funding requested in the estimated funding section of this form. This amount must match the amount of federal funding requested in the budget section of your application package. This program doesn't require a match. Therefore, values for applicant lines should be 0. The individual listed as authorized representative must be an individual who has the authority to apply for and accept grant awards on behalf of the organization or jurisdiction. Standard assurances and certifications regarding lobbying, debarment, suspension, and other responsibility matters, and drug-free workplace requirements, Form 4061-6. Carefully review the assurances and certification forms online. Applicants will receive a request to compile these forms online during the application submission process. All applicants must complete the Disclosure of Lobbying Activities, the SFLLL form. Applicants that expend any funds for lobbying activities must provide the detailed information requested on the form. Applicants that do not spend any funds for lobbying activities should enter NA in the required highlighted fields. Some more forms. The following documents should be uploaded and attached to the application. These also will not be scored during the review process, but need to be included. And failure to include any of the information may result in the inability to access funds if the application is selected for funding. The standard assurances and certification forms are located on the OVW website. The direct link from the OVW website is www.usdoj.usb.funding/forms.htm. Financial accounting practices. Applicants must prepare a response to the questions provided under this section on pages 28 to 29 of the solicitation. OVW will review the applicant's responses to assist in evaluating the adequacy of the organization's financial management system and to identify areas of need for training and technical assistance. This section of your application should be no more than 2 pages and should be a separate document to the online application in grants.gov. Indirect cost rate agreement, if applicable. Applicants that intend to charge indirect costs through the use of an indirect cost rate must have federally approved indirect cost agreement. Include a copy of the current signed federally approved indirect cost rate agreement. This should be a separate attachment to the application in grants.gov. Organizations that wish to negotiate an indirect cost rate can contact OVW's Grants Financial Management Division at ovw.gfmd@usdoj.gov or call 1-888-514-8556 for more information. Registration. Each applicant has to have a Data Universal Numbering System, or DUNS, DUNS number. Each applicant must also be registered in the System for Award Management, SAM, and submit the application online via grants.gov. Register immediately, but no later than February 8th, 2018. Please ensure the DUNS number for the application is for an organization eligible to apply for the grant program. Only the organization that is registered in SAM may use that DUNS number and grants.gov registration to submit an application. SAM. Applicants for all federal grants are required to register with the SAM, System for Award Management. If your organization already has an Employer Identification Number, EIN, the SAM registration will take 2 weeks to process. If your organization does not have an EIN, you should allow 2 to 5 weeks to obtain the information from IRS when requesting the EIN via phone, fax, mail, or internet. Follow the steps on page 30 of the solicitation on how to register in the SAM. Submission dates and times. All applications must be submitted electronically in grants.gov. The deadline for submitting applications is 11:59 p.m. Eastern Time on February 27, 2018. Applications submitted after 11:59 p.m. Eastern on February 27th will not be considered for funding. Applicants experiencing technical difficulties submitting an application should refer to the section Experiencing Unforeseeable Technical Issues on pages 33 to 34 of this solicitation. Applicants are strongly encouraged to submit their application at least 48, but no less than 24 hours before the deadline. After application submission, authorized representatives should closely monitor their emails for any notification from grants.gov about a possible failed submission. The authorized representative will receive a minimum of 2 emails from grants.gov. One will confirm receipt of the application package. The other will either notify the authorized representative that the application was successfully submitted, or it will notify that there was an error with the application submission. Applicants should not wait until the day of the application deadline to begin the submission. Please note that the grants.gov notification process is automatic. OVW does not send out these notifications, and nor do we receive a copy of them. It's the responsibility of the applicant to notify OVW of any problems with the application submission process. Please refer to Experiencing Technical Difficulties Prior to or During Application Submission issues on pages 33 to 34 of the solicitation for information on steps applicants must follow if corrective action must be taken. OVW offers several options for applicants to provide advance notice to OVW if receipt of your application will be delayed due to a temporary lack of internet access, other technical difficulties, or geographic isolation. If you do not provide us with advance notice about an issue that may cause a delay in the submission, then the application will not be considered for funding. Please follow the steps outlined on pages 32 to 33 of the solicitation concerning late submissions experiencing unforeseen tech issues, and extraordinary natural or human-made disasters. Late submission may be considered. Extension of deadlines is not guaranteed. Executive Order 12372 requires applicants from state and local units of government or other organizations providing services within a state to submit a copy of the application to the state single point of contact, if one exists, and if the state has selected this program for review. Applicants must contact their state standard or single points of contact, SPOCs, to determine whether their programs have been selected for state review. Food and beverage costs for refreshments, meals, and conference planning. Funding cannot be used to supply food and or beverages for refreshment breaks at meetings, conferences, trainings, or other events. OVW may approve the use of funds to provide food and or beverages for a meal at a meeting, conference, training, or other event under certain circumstances, as noted on page 35 of the solicitation. Applicants should be aware of these specific restrictions related to conference planning and expenditure limitations, also on page 35. Additional information regarding food and beverage regulations can be found in the OVW Financial Grants Management Guide at www.justice.gov/OVW/file/892-031/download. Grants.gov. I was mentioned before, after you obtain your DUNS number and register with SAM, you can begin the Grants.gov registration process. In order to apply for a grant, your organization must complete the Grants.gov registration process prior to beginning an application for a federal grant. Complete instructions can be found at Grants.gov. Bear in mind the registration process can take between 3 and 5 business days or as long as 4 weeks if all steps are not completed in a timely manner. Please note that Grants.gov is not the Office of Justice Programs, OJP, Grant Management System, GMS, through which OVW discretionary program applicants have submitted applications in previous years. If you experience difficulties at any point during this process, please call the Grants.gov Consumer Support Hotline at 1-800-518-4726. Tips for a successful application. Number 1, read the solicitation in its entirety before applying. Follow the solicitation. Provide relevant, detailed information about the proposed project. The information presented in the application will be the only information used to review and score your application during OVW's peer review process. When putting together your application, use all available assistance. For example, reaching out to OVW staff, communicating with TA providers, etc. Pay close attention to the solicitation, keeping in mind application registration and submission dates. Don't wait till the last day to upload your application. We do the best we can, but grant managers don't work 24/7, so if you experience a problem after normal working hours, it might mean all of your hard work was for nothing. Also ensure that each section is completely addressed, even if it feels redundant. To help with this, be sure to include section headers. Number every page. Limit the usage of acronyms included in the application. Make sure you attach various documents, and when uploading them, affirm that they are the final version of the document you're intending to submit. Upload each attachment and provide them with a simple, clear, and concise title. For example, if the document is your project narrative, label it project narrative. Don't label that document final draft or simply the date on which it was created. Make it as easy as possible for those of us reviewing your application to know what it is we're looking at. Well, folks, thanks for joining us, and we hope that this answered all, if not most, of your questions about this year's ICJR solicitation. The point of contact for the ICJR solicitation is Kaylin Crockett. Feel free to give her a call at 202-616-5342. Email her at kaylin.crockett@usdoj.gov. Email listed on this slide. You can also always give us a shout out at the OVW office main line, 202-307-6026. Thanks very much, and good luck with your submissions.